Hello. In today's episode of the ELK files, let's do things a little different. Let's look at the other side of the equation, okay? Like it hasn't gone unnoticed to me that some people in the comment section are trying to stick up for Mayor Sherry and have her back. They say things like, "You're being too critical of Sherry." ELK was in really bad shape and she needed to go in there and whip things up and, smooth things out. Um, I'm not going to lie. In the many hours of research that I've put into this project, looking at ELK financial statements or the correspondence with the Ontario Energy Board, past council sessions, social media posts, etc., I have come across some things that make it seem like Mayor Sherry, as she assumed the chair of ELK in late 2022, early 2023, her and the new board did face headwinds. And I would be remiss not to detail these things and provide some, balance to this reporting I've been doing. So, not to misrepresent Sherry's position, but I'm going to try my best to represent her position.
There's been a lot of red flags for a long time. So, finally the Ontario Energy Board has done its due diligence, looked into it, and now it's up to the shareholders, which is Essex Town Council, and the board of directors on ELK to have that conversation about what are next steps and who's accountable for this.
And maybe her rock'em sock'em, take no prisoners attitude rubs some people the wrong way. Maybe they couldn't take the heat, so they got out of the kitchen. And it seems to have started with the manager of regulatory affairs, Mark Danilon, who was in that previous video about the flickers. You didn't get to see really his testimony, but he was a really well-spoken, intelligent, um, gifted lawyer who worked at ELK for like 13 years. And he was basically keeping things together from a regulatory perspective. He left in 2021. And then the next year, as Wayne Miller described, the CEO, Mike Audette, who clashed with Sherry, he left. There were other major senior management positions that vacated. Apparently, their lead accountant. And then not just upper and middle tier managers at ELK, but after that election of 2022, a lot of people at town hall didn't want to be in that kitchen and left and resigned or retired. So in that time period, they were so short-handed and they were so short-staffed and they were so just like trying to like all the responsibilities got downloaded onto so many people, and I commend the people who stayed and supported Mayor Sherry and the new board in this transition period, because a lot of people didn't, and a lot of people just packed up their bags and left.
But I think at this point, council needs to look at how we appoint the board of directors for our owned utility company. We need to look for that skill set, that expertise in this sector.
And here is that new board that was appointed. You can see Sherry posted this towards the end of January 2023 after they had some training. It's Mayor Sherry in the middle with Deputy Mayor Rob Shepley. On the left of her is Kingsville Rep Kim DeYoung. And on the right of Rob is Lakeshore Rep John Kerr. On the far left is industry expert Jeff Scott. And on the far right, industry expert Brandon Chartier. Now let's take a look at their respective LinkedIn pages to see how these industry reps fit in this new skills-based board. And here's our look at Mr. Chartier. Your future is created by what you do today. And he has a lot of certifications. Looking at his industry experience, lots of time with Essex power lines. That is detailed here. Okay, so he's with the Office of the Fire Marshal. He spent all this time with Essex power lines, which is really good industry experience. Um, Subsequent to his board nomination, he was promoted to manager of corporate services. But for a long time, he was the supervisor of facilities, fleet purchasing, and risk mitigation for 11 years, almost 12. And this is exactly the type of qualifications they needed down at ELK at the time. They needed somebody who is smart about the facilities, the fleet, operations, sending out linemen, identifying issues, that sort of thing. He's also been a part-time firefighter with Town of Essex for a really long time, so very well known in the community, really stand-up guy, a really solid appointee to that board position. And our look at Jeff Scott. These are his certifications. He's mostly business development specialist with Enwin and an Enwin adjacent company. Let's look at that. Some Enwin qualifications. His experience, he was business development specialist since 2019. Before that, a key account manager with Enwin. And before that, he was with an Enwin adjacent, looks like a powder coating company. Shows here his experience as director at ELK. Was a member of the audit committee. And what I found interesting is he went to Essex District High. So, again, well known in the community, probably very well known with ELK and their systems. And there you go, another industry rep. And this time, kind of from the sales and marketing background from Enwin. There's some breaking news here in my local community, and one that I just noticed to my right is that a large ice storm blew through last night, and the ice on the tree branches are so heavy that they're breaking and falling down left and right. And look behind me, there's tree branches scattered all over. And the thing is I love reporting on stories that could have positive outcomes. So let me show you where we can turn this frown upside down. Okay, I've changed locations now to the community garden project that we're going to be working on this upcoming spring and summer. And over here, we're going to do a pallet garden, maybe along the back too. But here on this edge, the plan is to do hugelkultur garden. And that is the concept where you kind of bury and build on top of pieces of wood and sticks and branches and logs. And so that slowly over time, those logs and sticks break down and release the nutrients your plants need, and they flourish. And this process lasts for years and years and years. And so up until this big storm that happened last night, I didn't know where we were going to get all these sticks and logs and branches to do the hugelkultur project. Well, because of this ice storm, we have lots of that. And so it's just a good example of taking a bad situation and finding some opportunity in it. Till next time, goodbye. Right? Like, wow, it was like out of the frying pan into the fire. This new board that was just got their training and getting under their feet, under their way. A month later, wham, the whole region gets struck by this huge ice storm. Significant cost, significant craziness, and while dealing with staff shortages. So there was some big action there, and then actually, click down, there was a huge thunderstorm as well just a few months later. And so, like, let's look at these events from their submissions here, because what you can do is have the Z factor. And what this means is that if there's a natural disaster or some big event where it's kind of out of your control, ELK they can increase their rates in an emergency basis to cover all these costs. So that's what this application is with the OEB. And if we come down and look at these things, here are what it costs the utility for these two kind of natural disasters in this first term in 2023, the ice storm, the thunderstorm. And we can get a little more information by this table right here. In the ice storm event, about 3,000 customers were without power. 25% of our total customers. They did get it restored within a day or 2 days. And these are the costs associated with that. We actually had help from 2 other local utilities. A sent a lot of work, B sent some work. And so there you go. These are those and this is what they did. 10 poles, 20 fuses, 30 insulators that were replaced as a result of this storm causing damage. And then further on in the summertime, there was a huge thunderstorm event where it knocked out power to 41% of our customers. And some it took about a day and a half to get power back. And here are the costs associated with that, and this is the work associated with that. So it was a wild time in that first few months of the new board taking over. That's for sure. And so, taking those things into account, the reduced staff because everybody left, the ice storm, which really put them behind. Just 1 month later, March 27th, 2023, ELK signs this management services agreement with Integris, which is really smart, right? Let's be honest. They were missing so many key personnel and so behind the ball that they needed outside help to come in and straighten things out and give the board a chance to breathe and get underway. And actually, this agreement basically talks about giving the board time to complete a strategic review. And what does this strategic review, what could that involve? Well, it's going to look at all options considering mergers, acquisitions, taking on debt, hiring key people. They're looking at the utility from all angles and determining what courses of action do we have. We're strapped and we need to get things in order. So by having Integris come in and kind of manage the day-to-day, manage the upper level stuff, coordinate those submissions with the Ontario Energy Board, coordinate stuff on the ground. This is a really smart thing. Now, we paid for it, right? Like, this didn't come cheap. We paid a lot of money for Integris to come in and provide these services. But when you're in the thick of it, kind of money isn't really an object. You just got to do what you can. And that's what they did. And yeah, like if the board is going to do this strategic review and, all this effort to get the utility to a better place, they should be paid more for these efforts.
We have a public presentation night. Marjorie Richards, Strategic HR and Talent Management Consultant. Marjorie Richards and Associates Limited, ELK Energy Inc. Director Remuneration. Now, Marjorie, go ahead.
Oh, great. So just jump straight into it. Okay, I will share my screen. Okay, tell me if you can see that.
Okay, I guess a couple points I'll make to it. Come to my understanding that typically shareholders are not responsible for even setting the level of remuneration for board members. We've been doing it, I believe, probably since we've owned ELK. So I'm just wondering if council has any appetite to maybe look at the makeup of the shareholder declaration and maybe put the onus of the compensation back on the board. That's a question I have for council. Anyone have an appetite for something like that?
Mr. Chair, I was going in the same direction. So of course, if that comes to the floor, I'll be supporting it because as it's been made clear, our legal team has been very helpful keeping us up to speed on this file. And the last couple of emails have been very helpful. And
Just talk to that.
Just to add to that too, the requirement of the board to come to the shareholder to approve board member remuneration is because of a shareholder declaration that was done in February of 2023. That is your direction to the ELK board to come to you for remuneration. You can revoke that declaration. You can create a new declaration. It's your decision. So it's up to you, regardless of what you want to do today. You can make a decision today on the remuneration, or you could revoke your requirement to have that come to you for a decision. So that's up to council.
Our CEO, Doug Sweet, like to say something.
Chair, just for a clarification, and Marjorie probably wasn't aware, this report was commissioned prior to the shareholder changing the composition of the board. And at that time, administration was not on it. We are on it now. I think there's been 3 meetings. We have been receiving compensation for attending a meeting. So I know she said it wasn't, just for clarification for the shareholder.
Hang on, what? Administration is now on the board of ELK. Doug Sweet, Joe M., the legal person, and Kate Jarusevich, who will be the CAO, has been appointed to the board of ELK. That wasn't exactly disclosed to the contractor, Marjorie Richards. But Councillor Verbeek says very clearly that she wants to give the board the ability to set their own pay, and this was brought to her through emails and correspondence with the legal people at Town Hall, and the main legal person is Joe, who sits on the board of ELK now, and they go to him, and he's actually influencing the course of this discussion to show them, yes, you can revoke your shareholder agreement so that the board can set their own pay. But hang on, he's on the board. And if you look in the foreground, Mayor Sherry and Deputy Mayor Robb are sitting in the attendance chairs. Joe Guerin is chairing this meeting because they have recused themselves from discussion because they're on the board. So how come if Doug Sweet and Kate Jarusevich and Joe M. are also on the board that they did not recuse themselves from this discussion, but are actively talking to council and telling them their options that, yeah, you can revoke the agreement so that the board sets their own pay? This is really circular and, like, hypocritical? How come they didn't recuse themselves like the other board members?
With 5 in support and 0 opposed, the motion carries.
Well, there you have it. After a number of months on the job, that this board was finally given their due pay. I think their wage went up about 3x or 4x based on this consultant's recommendations, which means that, the previous board was significantly underpaid. And I guess that makes sense because their mantra was to keep rates low and pay down debt and be very prudent with the money of ELK. So, but anyways, this came up in the Facebook feed, and it's very interesting in that Rick Desjardins has some things to say. And then Mayor Sherry comes back and says that she absolutely agrees. And this term of council, we put people on the board with industry experience, which helped us get off to a really good start at the beginning of the term. Then we also had a legal person and an accountant to have a very strong board. The thing is that the composition of the board did change. Doug Sweet mentioned it in that review of the remuneration. So let's now examine how the board changed during this session. All right, here's that photo and Excel of the ELK Energy Board initial group. that was constituted based on those skills-based qualifications. We had the 2 industry reps, but we do have to discuss how shortly into his term, Mr. Chartier had some family issues come up that forced him to resign. I think many of us in the Essex community are aware of the situation and how difficult it is for everyone, especially the family. And I'll only say that Essex gained an angel, and that the memory of Jada will live on in her foundation, and I'm sure it will be used to benefit other children throughout the years to come. But a very tragic event, but Mr. Chartier had to resign because of those reasons, and he was replaced with the legal person, Joe. I don't really know how to spell it. I think that's his name. And there is Joe. As well, the Lakeshore rep would resign, and he was replaced by our town CAO, Doug Sweet, and there he is. And then also, we had Kate join the board. And this is what the board looked like at the time of sale to Enwin. You had Chair Sherry, Vice Chair Rob Shepley, Kingsville Rep Kim DeYoung, the CAO of town Doug Sweet, Enwin employee Jeff Scott, legal rep for the town, and other town council Kate Jarusevich. I will leave it to you to interpret the makeup of this board and how it was shortly thereafter sold to Enwin. And you can draw your own conclusions from there.